He's the face behind the guitar. Hard-hitting, Grammy Award-winning guitarist Tom Morello strikes his beat to the sounds of social justice. From his early days as lead guitarist of Rage Against the Machine to the Street Sweeper Social Club, Tom Morello incorporates social issues of the past and present to mobilize his fans toward political change. RT sits down with Tom Morello.
Tom Morello, thanks so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
So let's begin with the first question. Now, you were a member of the class of SB 1070. What swayed you to give your voice to the immigration debate?
Well, I was happy to join the immigration debate and the boycott of Arizona through the Sound Strike, which was founded by Zach De La Rocha, the singer of Rage Against the Machine. And it was a simple matter of him texting me, asking me what I thought. I said, I'm all in, what can we do to help? So Rage Against the Machine reached out to many of our friends, other artists, to ask them to join in the boycott. It's a law which basically makes mandatory racial profiling. And as someone who's been, I've spent a lot of my life being the victim of racial profiling. I literally integrated the town of Libertyville, Illinois. I was the first person of color to reside within its borders. And so growing up there, I would regularly be pulled over by the cops. Even recently, a couple of years ago, I was walking home from a bar at night and got pulled over and put in handcuffs on the side of the road because I looked like I might be someone who was stealing cars in the area. So I feel like firsthand a visceral experience with racial profiling. So I know what that law would mean to the daily lives of brown-skinned people in Arizona were it enacted. And so what Sound Strike does is we were asked by organizers within Arizona who are fighting against SB 1070 to lend our names to the international boycott, which goes beyond music. It's unions are boycotting, the city of Los Angeles is boycotting the state until the law is that awful racist law is thrown out once and for all.
What do you make of how Obama and the banks have been handling our economy?
As expected. While Obama is a African-American president, he's also a member of the Democratic Party. For 2 years, I was the scheduling secretary for U.S. Senator Alan Cranston, who was very progressive, as progressive as any member of the U.S. Senate during his tenure. But most of the time that I spent with him, he was on the phone asking rich guys for money. And there's a certain forfeiting of one's soul that has to occur in order to achieve higher office, and the compromises that have to be made. There are no Dr. Kings or Malcolm X's or Gandhis that are going to make, or Rage Against the Machines, they're going to make it that far because of the compromise that has to occur. So it's basically what I expected. I mean, it's maybe to a less egregious state that during the Bush administration the economy's been in the hands of Wall Street, but it's certainly in the hands of Wall Street.
Tom, what do you make of international organizations like the UN? Do you think they actually live up to their objectives of helping developing nations and ending world conflicts, or do you think that they actually cater to the benefits of the more wealthier developed nations?
Well, I mean, if the question is, how successful has the UN been? I mean, the UN Security Council is basically in the hands of the United States and its closest ally. 150 countries, around the planet can vote that this has been a war crime, and the U.S. just says no, it's not, and that's the end of the discussion. So it's not really so much a United Nations as it is a body of countries that is beholden to the interests of a few, and so it behaves much like you'd expect.
President Obama has been the commander-in-chief now for 2 years, and everyone hoped that it would usher in this new wave of multilateral negotiations and policies toward the rest of the world, but some would argue that that's actually been the opposite since he came into power. How would you rate Obama's U.S. foreign policy?
I mean, I think that Obama's foreign policy is wanting, but again, Obama ran on a policy of expanding the war in Afghanistan, and that's one promise that he's followed through on in spades, and continuing that illegal and immoral war, as well as still being engaged in Iraq, not closing down Guantanamo Bay. One thing that Obama has done, which just by virtue of who he is, like I've traveled in the Middle East in the last year, and whereas previously you travel in the Middle East, people are like, you're from the USA, you guys suck. Now it's like all anyone says is Obama, Obama. So at least the face of United States foreign relations has had an ameliorating effect on some parts of the world. But I think the underlying policy, like I said, it's a Democratic president. It's not a socialist president. It's a Democrat. You know, it's like he does the things that you expect Democrats to do.
You know, the U.S. government used your music as a form of coerced techniques, so some people consider it torture, blasting your music for 72 hours nonstop to essentially convince detainees to give information. How did you feel when you found out that the U.S. government had used your music to torture people?
When we learned that the United States government was using Rage Against the Machine's music to torture people at Guantanamo Bay, we sued the State Department to get them to stop. And we were unsuccessful in that suit and pursued it over the course of a couple of years. And I think it's a crime. My only hope is that on that day, hopefully at some point not in the too distant future, when the war criminals of the Bush administration are brought to trial and are one day wearing their yellow jumpsuits and black hoods, that it will be the music of Rage Against the Machine that is pumped into their cells 24 hours a day.
Tom, you used to be a member of a very well-known group, Rage Against the Machine. I'm wondering, how would you categorize, or what would you believe the machine to be today, and do you think people should be outraged?
Should people be outraged? They certainly should be outraged. What would I categorize as the machine of today? I don't know, I think the overarching message of all of my projects, whether it's Rage Against the Machine, Street Sweeper Social Club, or The Night Watchman, is that it's everyday people who have their hands on the wheel of history. That you can't just wait and cast your ballot into the void every 4 years and cross your fingers and hope for the best that some magical president is going to sprinkle fairy dust and make everything all right. That's not how progressive, radical, or even revolutionary change has ever occurred. Change happens because you and me and the people watching this or listening to this act and stand up for their rights where they live in their time. That's how we, in this country, how we got the 8-hour day, how we got children out of coal mines, how we got a weekend, how we got desegregated lunch counters. That didn't come from the pontification of some brilliant Supreme Court justice. That came because the people forced it to happen.
How would you say capitalism has affected the world?
It's omnipresent. Having had the opportunity to tour in many countries around the planet, even over the course of my touring history, which has been about 18 years now, Perth starts to look like Lisbon, starts to look like Berlin, starts to look like Mexico City. They all have the same Dunkin' Donuts, the same Benetton shops. Capitalism's job is to remake the world in its image, and to create wants, to create unnecessary wants, so there's products to sell to newly dissatisfied consumers. That's why you have to have the right pair of jeans to be attractive, or the right beer to have your thirst quenched, or the right Viagra pill to succeed in romance. And these things are, so in that regard, capitalism is very successful. What I would say is also successful, and you have to, is that there's a balance to that. And you look at the progressive changes that happened in a lot of South American countries over the course of the last decade, while U.S. aggression was pointed at the Middle East, that there really has been a resurgence in people's democracies that are not juntas and are not dictators, but you're seeing sort of indigenous people in power. You're seeing economic, domestic policies of South American countries geared towards helping the poor, like saying out loud they're helping the poor, something you can never say in the United States in an election. And so there is some reason for hope.
What do you make of what's happening in Latin America right now? You're seeing a lot of those developing nations collaborate with each other to throw off the sphere of very strong influence the U.S. has had in that region for decades.
I think that the movement in South America towards the people's democracies and a democratization of those economies really was able to occur because the eye of Sauron was pointed at the Middle East. And it was the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that diverted the United States' attention, which I'm sure they would have been 24 hours a day trying to put the hammer down on the spawn of Venezuela and all as that virus spread through South America. But really, both economic, I think political capital was so invested in the Middle East that there was this window of opportunity for the people of South America to make their own choices free of the normal dominating U.S. influence.
Where did the name Street Sweeper Social Club come from?
Street Sweeper Social Club is the name of the group that I share with Boots Riley. We have a new record out called the Ghetto Blaster EP, and we're currently enjoying our time on the Rock the Bells tour. Where does the name derive from? Well, a street sweeper is a firearm. It's like a machine gun that shoots shotgun-sized shells. And the idea is that our music is a weapon for social change. The reason why it's a social club is, one, because we're a very social unit, and there's a very low bar for entry into the social club. All you got to do is listen and enjoy our jams or come to a show and you're in. Also, we were trying to avoid litigation because someone else owned the name Street Sweeper.
What role do you think musicians should play as far as social justice and political change goes? Do you think that they should take on a more Bono-like role and work towards different issues, or do you think they should get on the ground and work with movements to implement that change?
Well, I would say, first of all, I would never. What musicians need to do is what is honest to themselves, and I would never suggest that musicians that do not have a sort of social conscious adopt one because I suggest it. You know what I mean? But on the other hand, I think that not just musicians, but people in any profession, whether they're journalists or cameramen or groundskeepers, that they don't divorce their lives from their politics and their beliefs, and that. I didn't choose to be a guitar player. That chose me. I'm stuck being a guitar player. So then it's my job to weave my convictions into my work, into my vocation. And so I've tried to do that through, the music that I create, my interaction with the audience, and the nonprofit, groups and organizations that I support, through my music. So that's what I would recommend. Is just don't. To musicians at whatever level, whether you're playing stadiums or whether you're playing in basements, to not be afraid to weave your convictions into what you write about and in what you do with your art.
Tom Morello, member of the Street Sweeper Social Club and international activist. It was great to have you. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much for having me.